Welcome to the Operatory. I'm Dr. Bryan Laskin. We are going to be talking today, as always at the Operatory, about killing the dinosaurs in dentistry and providing dentistry from the other side of the chair, the patient's perspective. With me today is Dave Pryor.
Hello, everyone.
To speak from that other side of the chair. It'll be interesting to hear your perspective on today's topic, Dave, which is the dozen ways to blow patients' minds without blowing your bank account. Leading up to this, you said something that was great. Could you repeat to our entire audience what you said to me?
Yeah, I don't care how much you spend on blowing my mind.
Great perspective. From the patient's perspective, you don't care. Now, does that mean that you don't care because you're like, I want you to spend as much as possible to make me happy, or I don't care about whether or not the dollar amounts, just make me happy?
I don't care how much it costs you to create an environment that is comfortable. I want my dentistry to be successful, so I don't care about the environment. I don't care what's on the walls. I don't care about a fountain in the middle of the room. None of this matters to me.
Yes, and I think you are, in this case, maybe exclusively normal, right?
Shocking!
So this is one of the very normal things about you, Dave, because when I think about ways to blow patients' minds, transform their perspective about what it means to go to the dentist, similar to other things in dentistry, I think we're missing the mark. That's what this podcast is all about. Let's become a sniper rifle, not a shotgun to our issues. And when people talk about blowing patients' minds, oftentimes they think about building like that Taj Mahal that you're talking about, the mausoleum to yourself and your team. I do believe that that's important, having a nice office. I think having a beautiful office is actually incredibly important in dentistry, but not for the patients. I mean, yes, for patients, because they want it to be clean and nice, right? If you look at the studies, like clutter in your office makes it seem unsterile. Right or wrong, that's the way people think, that if you do have clutter.
Well, it makes it seem unprofessional.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's from my perspective. If your office is always clean and sharp and it looks good, but it's, there's no fountains.
No.
And then the TVs aren't this gigantic, overwhelming thing. And
as a point of perspective, the builder that built my office said to me, you might not know this because we're in kind of a dense area that is high rent, certainly, and we bought the building, and there were 3 floors, and I wanted to get all the operatories in on one floor because rent is, at this point, square footage, because I bought the place, is expensive. So this may surprise you, but the builder who built my office told me it was the highest production per square foot office he had built. Does that surprise you?
No, I guess not, because it seems efficient. Mm-hmm. The way it's laid out in there, everything seems very efficient.
It is crazy efficient because that's we planned to make it super efficient, and however, it's really nice, right? I mean,
it's
that efficiency actually benefits patients,
right?
We don't have to leave the operatory to get done what we need to get done, and we could have a whole nother podcast on efficient office design, and that's probably a good idea.
That's because I'm a genius.
You are a genius, Dave. But that Taj Mahal it's important to design it, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. But there are reasons to spend money, in my opinion, in dentistry, and that is for, want to guess?
I have no idea.
Our staff. It's like, for recruitment, for like hiring and retaining the great people. The people who are there every day who actually care about the office is your team, right? Not your patient. I mean, they're there, they want a nice place, but in my opinion, that office design is as much or more for your team than for patients. And that doesn't mean, in my opinion, making a mausoleum to the dentist, right? Because you're there no matter what. It's for your team.
Well, and how much of it do you really pay attention to after the first few weeks, right? It disappears into the background.
There is that, I agree with you because that's a big risk. When I go to other practices, I see, the baby blue walls, and I'm like, this hasn't changed since 1970.
Yeah.
We actually bring in somebody. Last year it was actually my wife who brings a notepad and goes outside the building and all around and writes down things that they think should change, like a third party outside
Oh, sure,
perspective.
yeah.
Because we, it's not, that doesn't cost much. That's not even in the 12. It's a
Right.
bonus one. It's 13 ways is, have somebody else, just a third party, walk through your office and write down and say, you know what, there's that picture of, is outdated, or that wallpaper is coming up in that corner, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why is that Taj Mahal yourself. I agree with you that's not important.
Right.
It is for staff, but not for patients. Another way to blow patients' minds that people tell you to do that does cost a lot of money is to pay for expensive consultants to train your staff about talking to people. Motivating your staff, great. Hiring these consultants, great. But a lot of them cost $30,000, $40,000. I mean, that's a lot of money.
No kidding.
You just rolled your head back because I
Yeah.
don't think you knew that actually goes on.
Well, $30,000 for a consultant to come in, and then how long do they come in for?
Well, it's like a whole year-long plan, but
Yeah.
it comes down to, in my opinion, a lot of times some common sense things.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can get the information elsewhere. You can do team building experiences and things to generate that staff, that team, and in large part, in my mind, Trucker, I think it was, that said about culture, you have to basically hire for it. You can't create culture. You have to hire for it. So
Yeah.
if you hire the right people, right,
Right.
then you have the right culture.
Right.
Doesn't matter how much you spend on training at that point. You can't take that
Yeah.
that
no,
bubbly
I agree with
person
that
and
100%.
squash it. And you can't take the Eeyore and make them into Tigger, right? I mean,
No,
that's a first and last Winnie the Pooh reference I think I have ever used.
super excited to use it against you in the future.
Well, thank you, Tigger. Well, another way expensive way to blow patients' minds, which is near and dear to my heart, and I've done training for over a dozen years with CAD/CAM, CT imaging, new technology. Some of this is beautiful, wonderful, costs tons of money, and so we're not talking about those today because they're expensive. $120,000, $150,000 pieces of equipment are great, but if you don't have the patient base to generate the income to pay for those, doesn't matter. And you'll see in our upcoming 12 that there's ways to do that. Did you realize that those pieces of equipment cost that much money?
Yeah, I remember you telling me
Because I cried when I bought them. Yeah,
that's the thing. And there's a lot of equipment that you'll buy and you'll only use it for a couple of years because some other new technology comes out to replace it. And in particular, cameras. You seem to get slaughtered with camera prices a lot. When I found
digital cameras?
Yeah. And when you told me how much a dental chair cost,
I have one sitting literally in the basement of my office right now, ready to be put in. We're putting in another chair.
Yeah.
And so thanks for bringing up the cost of a dental chair right now, Dave. Right as I just talked to my accountant yesterday about how much I owe in taxes, and I'm looking at that chair going, maybe So yes, I think stuff is expensive.
Yeah. No, and I get that. But I mean, to be fair, there's a cost of doing business for everything. But like you said, you've got a high density, a lot of stuff going on in your office all the time. So to add one more chair, it's going to create that much more production. So I get that there's a cost to doing business at that level. But there's some stuff where I'm like, when you're spending $150,000 on something and you know that it's only got a 3 to 5 year life expectancy and then it's going to be replaced with some other new technology, that's got to bite. That's got to bite a lot.
Well, it's interesting because for me, technology snowballed. I started off when I bought my first CAD/CAM system, and it was $120,000. I was like crying because I had just bought my second practice, merged them together, and I knew in my gut that this made a lot of sense, and it did. I mean, it ended up paying for itself wonderfully. It's great. I have 2 systems now in my current practice, and you're right, they've both been replaced multiple times because the technology changes and you have to upgrade, or you don't have to, but it makes sense to. And so I'm a big advocate of these machines. I don't want to state that I'm not. I use them all the time, but I'm saying that there's, from your side of the chair, Dave, I mean, there's probably things that we do in our office that are just as impactful, like you said, where you don't have to spend that kind of money.
Yeah. I mean, from the patient perspective, the thing that you've mentioned so far that I think is the biggest impactful thing is just hiring the right people.
Absolutely. Again, that's number 14. That's your second bonus. Hire the right people, for sure. So another expensive way that people talk about blowing patients' minds. Really was big when I got out of dental school. It's not as big, but you still see it. It's kind of an extension of that Taj Mahal. It's the dental spa experience. Things like, when I got out of dental school, there was things like using wax paraffin baths for your patient's hands, and that's not that expensive. But the things like you talked about, Dave, the fountains and things like that, it crosses. It's not the Taj Mahal, but it's similar where you have to spend a lot of money to make your office have that spa feel. And it's good, but it's certainly not my practice. It's not my style.
How is that any of those spa treatment sort of things like paraffin wax for your hands? And I get it that it's comfortable, but ultimately you're trying to erase the anxiety of going to the dentist with paraffin wax. I don't think
we just did that podcast about the 8 reasons why people hate going to the dentist. Paraffin wax does not get rid of the sound and the smell
Right.
of healing. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing is we're not actually directly addressing a specific problem with the patient. When they're coming to the dental office, they're not thinking, oh, I bet they're going to help take care of my cracked skin on my hands today, right? And in my mind, do we want to be more like medicine? Like from the perspective of, are we a healthcare clinic or are we a hair salon, right? I mean, and it's similar to what we talked about with gum. Yep. Are we Walgreens or are we medical professionals, right? Yep. Working in the dental space. Yeah. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of these, the paraffin wax, and certainly not technology that's expensive but elevates our game. That's what we're all about here, is killing dinosaurs. And obviously, CAD/CAM kills off the old school impressions, and I'm all for that. That's what we do all day long in my practice. So I'm not against it, but it's expensive, right? And we're talking about the inexpensive ways to do that today. So let's get into it. Got 12 ways that you can transform your patient's experience for very little cost. I'm going to switch our number 1 and number 2 today because it is now winter in Minnesota. And what's the temperature today?
Negative 12 degrees before wind chill. So I don't even know what the wind chill is. There's a point in Minnesota where it's just cold and it doesn't matter how much colder it gets.
So those of you who are posting, I'm not a big social media guy, but the people on Facebook in Arizona that are posting how it's 74 degrees right now, that's fantastic for you, but it just makes us cry over here.
Right? Well, and it makes us angry.
Tears of ice, right? But so in Minnesota, this time of year, it snowed today, snowed yesterday. One thing that we do is we have ice scrapers with our logos in our office because that is one of those things where the ice scraper is never around when you need it, right? People rush to our office and so we just have a big bucket of ice scrapers, and I don't know what they cost, but I can tell you the joy on the patient that doesn't have an ice scraper when there's ice on their windshield and they keep that in their car. It's way more impactful than any other thing that we could do to make them cookies or whatever when they come in.
Well, and everybody pulls their ice scraper in the spring, it pulls it out of their car and then puts it back in the fall or after the first snow, and it's after. It's not before. Nobody ever thinks to do it before. Sneaks up on you, and then that's nice. That's a nice feature to be able to actually walk out of there with an ice scraper. We have patients commenting on it all the time, and just you can have inexpensive ones because the small ones that like you're talking about, people keep in their glove box so that it's always there. You don't take it out in the springtime. For those of you who are in Florida don't realize that we have to have our industrial one with the brush and the scraper and the flamethrower on it, right? For when we get this time of year, but the one that's there all the time, right? And so much so that I have my own branded one in there because I used it myself one day. So it's also somewhat selfish because if I don't have it in my car, I can grab one from the office. Number 2 is very similar to the ice scraper. It's the flip side of the coin, umbrellas. I don't know. Do you have an umbrella in your car? No.
I just knew. It was just that you don't have an umbrella in your car. But you also probably don't care if you get all sopping wet.
Well, I don't get... I'll run. But even if I'm wearing a suit going to a business meeting, I will just run. I don't care. But I have run into the situation where I've had somebody in the car and didn't have an umbrella, and they cared. And so that 3 or 4 times in my life, it's been a hassle.
Yeah, and some patients really do care, and it is nice to have. It's one of those things that, again, costs very little, but when you have them just sitting up there for people to take, it's one of those small things that you can do that, it's going to be branded. They're going to be walking around town with your umbrella open with your logo, which is cool. But also just there's that warm fuzzy that when they're leaving your office that that you've solved a direct problem of theirs right then that they can use, that you've made them happy. Much more impactful than paraffin wax, in my opinion. So moving on, the third that we have is lip balm. We have tiny little lip balms that they sell that come in funky flavors. It's always a fun little icebreaker when we put it on patients' lips before we work on them, if it's like orange grapefruit or whatever. But that is one of those things that I think is almost expected at the dental practice.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people come in, they have chapped lips, and we're going to be stretching their cheeks and things.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't use lip balm today, I would recommend it. And also using them, giving it to the patient, obviously, versus like using Vaseline and having a big tub or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an easy, inexpensive way to transform their experience. And rather than waiting for people to ask, we just do it. Because again, if you do it before they ask, or you ask them before they ask you, you're anticipating a need, which is a much, much better experience than addressing the need when they ask.
Well, I can't imagine somebody in Minnesota not having lip balm at the ready all the time. That's nuts.
Well, especially this time of year where it's super dry, right?
Right,
I mean, we see people coming in with alligator lips going when they open up. And,
if I was dying from that, it would be the greatest thing ever, and it costs you a quarter for one of those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
We like the smallest ones we can find, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big lip balm user in general, but I don't think I've ever used a full tube of lip balm. I think they should all be like 1/10 the size, because you're going to lose it before you use it.
I use it all the time.
Lip balm is one of those things like you're either like the obsessive guy using it all the time, or you never do. And
I use it all the time.
Another way that we are 180 degrees different, my
Oh
friend.
my God.
Well, moving on. Number 4, we have the new patient tour. I think this is drastically underutilized in dentistry. In general, in a lot of businesses. It's this highly scripted in my office, where we have a very direct way that we bring new patients into our practice from the moment they walk in and get greeted and get shown where the restrooms are and the coffee, to walking around, showing you the plaque of the dentist you're going to be seeing and a little bit about them, to giving them a new patient gift when they walk in the operatory. Tour of your practice, showing people, highlighting things like your sterilization procedures and whatever new technologies you have is key for patients, because a lot of times patients are very loyal to dentists, and so if they're coming to your practice for the first time, you want to sort of give them the lay of the land. Does that ring true with you from the other side of the chair, Dave?
Yeah, I saw one company that I was prospecting in my job where they had a professional description of all the employees, and then as you scrolled over the employee's photo, it started with a very professional looking photo, and then you scrolled over it, and it turned into their fun side photo. And as you're going through and just kind of looking at everybody's fun side photo, I ran across one where it was a woman shotgunning a beer, and I was like, "Well, this is awesome. What does she do?" "Oh, sales. Shocking."
As you're sipping on Red Bull right now.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. And well, you do. I mean, highlighting people, like you're saying, is big. I mean, because people can't have a relationship with a company, or they have a relationship with other people. Mm-hmm. And so having those pictures on the wall is big, and saying you're going to be seeing, this doctor and their specialty is this. If you have a multi-dentist practice like we do, is huge. Or just having the picture of the one person saying, she's fantastic, and here's what her focus is. It just gets people to know the person before they know the person, which is huge in dentistry, because we're all, like we talked about on a previous podcast, about trust and getting people to know you. They see that little window of themselves in you is huge, and it costs nothing.
Well, and when I'm giving a referral to anybody, all that I do is just send them a link. And so if I can send them a link to the person rather than the overall practice, and I say, here's Bryan, or here's the hygienist, somebody that I know, it's a easy way for me to be able to give a recommendation.
And it costs absolutely nothing, right? To show people around your office.
Yep.
So those are the four sort of easy ones. The fifth one, we have blankets. As mentioned, it's 12 degrees below here. And sometimes, I don't know what it is about Minnesota, but when it's this cold, even when you're inside in heat, you know you've got that feeling that it's freezing cold outside.
Well, you're chilled for the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so having blankets on the ready with your logo on them just, gives people that literally warm, fuzzy feeling, right?
Yeah.
So blankets are an easy one, cheap too. Number 6 is near and dear to my heart, immersive video or virtual reality. Yeah. We talked before about the CAD CAM experience and how you mentioned how you knew I had to upgrade every time. That's one of the cool things about Opera VR is there's no upgrading. You just pay for your subscription, and we inexpensive comparative to any other technology. And we actually ship you the new hardware whenever we change it out. So there's actually it's interesting that you brought that up, Dave, because you're looking at me like you didn't even know that about Opera VR, did you?
No.
Yeah, our virtual reality experience, which is totally transforms the patient experience. As Dave pointed out earlier, I felt the pain so much of upgrading my other equipment that my friend, who didn't even know that I did this with the virtual reality application, brought it up earlier on this podcast, right? So I feel your pain, people. I know buying that piece of technology and going, I just spent $150,000.
Yeah.
And in 3 years, guess what? I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
Not true of our virtual reality application, because I am one of you. I feel your pain, and I would just want to make it easy for you. You don't have to worry, especially in virtual reality, because let's face it, it's such a new technology. Stuff is changing so fast that I have no idea who's going to come out with what. But I do know, more than the average person, because we developed the application, and we're developing for new platforms. But I don't want anybody in dentistry to have to worry about that technology. We have somebody in our practice who is she's our tester, right? Yeah. She's the most technologically challenged person on the planet, right? I don't know how she works in our office because we love doing technology, but she's fantastic, wonderful person, but it's got to pass her test. If she can't do it, we don't use it. We're not going to give it out to other people. And it comes down to hardware. Hardware is a big piece of that, and I don't want people to have to worry about it. So, virtual reality, again, very inexpensive. It actually transforms the patient's experience by sending them somewhere else, their awareness, so they don't even feel like they're in the dental practice. Transcends all of the reasons why people hate having work done while they're in your chair, which is the biggest reason why people hate coming to the dentist. And you give them a way to bring it home and show it off to their friends and family. A very inexpensive way to blow their mind and actually literally take their mind somewhere else. It's been the biggest impact in generating new patients in our practice recently. And it falls on number 6 on our 12 ways to blow people's minds without blowing your bank account. Number 7, walking into every appointment prepared. What actually led me down the pathway of developing technology in dentistry was going in and having the patient have to restate the same problem that they just did twice before. Yeah. We've all had that experience when we go, we're bleeding from the head. we go in, and the receptionist at the hospitals.
Go on. You're bleeding from the head. I'm getting excited about this prospect.
Because of Dave, I'm bleeding from the head. And I go up to the hospital, and the receptionist says, well, why are you here? And you go, my head is bleeding. And they go, oh, well, wait 45 minutes and we'll bring you back. You go back, and the nurse comes in, and what's the first thing she asks you?
What's wrong?
Why are you here?
Yeah.
Well, I'm bleeding. Not only am I bleeding from the head, but I just told somebody that. Then the physician comes in, and what do they say? Why are you here, right? We want to avoid that. Not only that, we don't want to shame people by restating all of the gory details that the hygienists have talked about their horrible hygiene when the hygienist is in the operatory. We want to get all of the information in advance. Costs virtually nothing. You can do this with Post-it notes if you want to. We developed Opera DDS where you can do it like on your Apple Watch, so you get that information while you're working on the patient. But you can just do it from Post-it notes if you want to go even super inexpensive. And when you walk in, rather than saying, how's everything going, you can directly address the patient's problem. I can say, I'm sorry, Dave, you're bleeding from the head. Jane has a room ready. If you want to, we can get that taken care of right now. And the patient looks up at you like it completely transforms the experience. You can talk about, if a patient has a broken tooth, you can take care of it right then. Financial arrangements can be made, the room can be ready, and you just take care of that patient's chief complaint before they've even told it to you. Changes the game.
So from my side of the chair, what it does is it makes you look a lot more professional. It's professionalism, and as a middle-aged guy, that's what I'm looking for when I go to any sort of service industry, which is what I consider what dentistry is be professional, know what you're talking about, know what you're doing, and don't waste my time.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I'm a firm believer of patients can't judge quality, right? Of what we do. We work in microns. We our shades, and people just can't. They can't judge dentistry the way that we judge dentistry. Hopefully, right? Hopefully us as dental professionals, our criteria is much higher than the patients, but they do judge our quality in other ways, like clutter. Yeah. If you have a cluttered office, I believe this is one of those ways. Coordination between your team, right, makes it feel like you deliver higher quality care.
Right.
Do you agree?
I think that you knowing what you're talking about when you walk into the room, instead of saying, okay, I just came from patient A, now you're my patient B, what's going on in this room? That's not the experience that I have when I go into your office. This is what you got going on, this is what we're going to do. Like, you come in prepared, you know what you're talking about, and it's in and out. As I talked about on a previous podcast, I was just in for a filling a couple of weeks ago, and I was literally in and out in 20 minutes for a filling, which kind of blew me away. And it wasn't, for the first time, it wasn't you delivering the dentistry, it was one of your associates. And from walking in the door to walking out the door was 20 minutes. Well, I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, I think that's one of the things sort of about the way we deliver care that I'd like to get into in future podcasts. Dave's known me for over 20 years. I have a little bit of hypervigilance, a little bit, and I'm obsessive about systems, and so we have reasons why we do things and ways we do things that are all documented, and some of those things we can get into. Like in the future, we'll do a podcast on the efficient all ceramic preparation, where I use 2 burrs and it should take less than 2 minutes to prepare a tooth for a crown. That'll be an interesting conversation to hear the opinion from the other side of the chair, my friend. Yeah. But that is, in my opinion, I think a lot of times in dentistry, people think that there's this trade off. If you do things efficiently, it lowers the quality. I believe the opposite. If you actually have a plan and you execute it and you have it documented how you do things and reasons why you do things, it's actually higher quality because it results in more consistent results.
But from my side of the chair, I would agree with that. I think that being able to get in and get out in 20 minutes means you know what you're doing. You're effective at your job.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of two ways. Either you're just cutting corners or you know what you're doing.
Right.
And that's not the common theme in dentistry. It's efficiency oftentimes leads to the perception of lower quality. And I think that's not the case, which we can get into. Huh. Number 8, not judging people. It sounds funny to have it on there. Again, it's free, but we went over the 8 reasons why people hate going to the dentist, and being lectured was one of them. I believe that it comes down to, in dentistry, we're us really taking on the patient's problem as our own instead of allowing it to be the patient's issues, and factually telling them the way things are and having no attachment to whether or not they choose what we would choose to do, as long as it's not negative care. Does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I think that we get sometimes over-attached to our value systems versus the patient's, and in today's marketplace, that's a big issue.
Yeah. The whole reason for me sitting in this chair is that you've got to look at things from the patient's perspective, and coming in and being lectured at isn't going to help move the needle for you in terms of creating a good relationship with the patient.
And the reason why it's on the list today is that you're going to be blowing the patient's mind who's had that negative experience, right? We're not talking about the anesthetics and things today, because those are other ways to blow people's minds, but just the verbiage you use in your practice can totally change the patient Number 9, we have free Wi-Fi and device charging. very simple to do, right? Just have your IT professional create a free Wi-Fi channel, and then have chargers in your reception area and in each operatory. Everybody today is comforted by their mobile device, and so having that easily available, to me, what kind of blows my mind that lots of offices don't do this.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty no-brainer thing to do.
Yeah, for copy.
But now that I think about it, I've seen it in your office for a couple of years now. I don't know anybody else that does it in any industry. Like I'm an outside sales guy, and I go to a lot of different businesses, and I'm sitting in their reception area. I don't think I've ever seen it in another reception area. So that's
and we don't even make people wait. If you have people waiting, that's
Right.
another big thing is staying on time. No matter what you do, there's going to be people waiting in your reception area,
Right.
And so having Wi-Fi is huge.
Yeah.
Number 10 on our list is near and dear to my heart, coffee. I had to put it on there just because I am that. If my biggest vice is probably coffee, I love it, and so for people like me, having coffee, tea, just having I think at this point it's probably expected when you go to a dental office that they have some like beverage center, right? So that's sort of a no-brainer in my mind. But we have like the Keurig system, which those coffee pod things, which is nice because then you can have not just, especially today in Minnesota, you can have hot chocolate and tea and a variety of things. The last two I think might be a little more out of the box thinking. Uber coupons. It's very easy to pay for Ubers for your patients, and for a lot of patients, like today in Minnesota when it's icy out, we have patients that don't want to come in because of the ice and snow, or if there's a storm outside. So particularly if you're doing a larger procedure, paying for Ubers for people can totally change the game.
Yeah.
The number 12 is an easy gift that I love called Sugar Wish. We all have ways that we give patients little gifts, usually if they do referrals or if we run late and we want to give them a little something. Sugarwish.com is a very cool website where you can pick the level of the gift that you give the person, and then they get to select what type of treat they get. There's things from nuts to hot tamales and gummy bears and whatever you want. They're as cheap as like $15. And what's really cool about that is that you get 2 touch points for the patients, and you only have to use their email address. I don't know, have I ever sent you a Sugar Wish?
I think I did get one once, and I just kind of blew it off because I didn't need more sugar. But I was going to say, is there a salty wish?
Yes, there is a salty wish in Sugar Wish. You're right. It's kind of funny. It's another thing too because people always comment that they're getting a Sugar Wish from their dentist, right? So it's you can tell them you can choose nuts or healthy snacks too. But what's cool about it is that you could send off many of them at once. So if you have 50 patients you want to send to, all you need to do is copy paste their email address. Write one note that then would go to everybody, and then they get an email where they get to select their wish, and then it gets mailed to them. And so there's a couple touch points. You can have your logo and like a custom made like it looks like a little electronic postcard. And so you get one touch point when the patient opens it, and they go, "Oh, that's nice." And then you get another touch point when they receive it in the mail with your logo and everything. So you get kind of like a double warm fuzzy for the patients when you give that gift versus just handing them a Starbucks card or something like that. Yeah. So let's recap. 12 new, hopefully, ways to blow your patients' minds without blowing your practice. We have ice scrapers, umbrellas, lip balm, transforming your new patient tour, blankets, Opera VR, walking into every appointment prepared, losing the judgment when talking to people, free Wi-Fi and device charging, coffee, Uber, or Lyft coupons, and Sugar Wish, the easy way to get a couple touch points when gifting your patients. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave.
You bet. Have a good one.
Yep. Talk to you next time.